Hi guys, so this is a follow-up to my previous video where we tried to build a brightness control for these gold neon LED strips. So this escalated rather quickly. I was showing it to some of my friends, and as usual, all those crazy ideas started coming up. And the most common one of those is, hey, that's a great product. Let's build a lot of it, sell it, and make a lot of money. And that's the usual dream that we chase, whether you're building stuff like electronics, making games or software. So I decided to just rant a bit and make this series of slides to sort of share what my take on it is. So build products, make money. It's not easy. So it's very easy when you're eating pizza, drinking beer, and then just dreaming of stuff. But to get from a prototype to a final product that you can actually make money out of, it's not easy. But it is possible. So let's go to the next slide. So building the product, I'd categorize it into three general uh, categories. So one is mass production. So you supply your estimated demand, try to lower your production cost by making a lot of things. So for example, phones. They make phones in the millions. Okay, so that's because they expect millions of people to buy it. That kind of thing is out of our capabilities right now. Uh, Next is the limited production. So this is something an individual can do. Uh, so you can sort of compare it to having a Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding type thing where you pre-sell your product, then get the money you get from that to build the product. So in this case, you're not estimating your market size. You already have pre-orders, and hopefully they've all already paid something. So you have the money to build your products. You know how many products you'd need to build, and so you can start from there doing the computation on your profits and stuff. And the easiest for individual builders or small startup companies would be the commissioned or the per order basis. So you might think of it as somebody tells you, hey, I want something just like that. Okay, you get the order, maybe get a payment deposit for it, you build it, he pays fully for it, and then that's it, you sold one product. uh, in that case, you're of course not just going to make one that you sell, you're going to need at least two, one as a spare, because you still need to support the one that you built. So if something goes wrong with that, you at least have something like a spare service unit to replace whatever he has, and while you repair it. And also you'd also need, of course, a demo for trying to sell it to others as well. So mass production, let's just go over this quickly because we'll probably not be able to do it anyway. So you're building millions of stuff. You have to be able to estimate your market. Uh, you do it so you totally lower your production cost. The design level has to be professionally done. So no breadboards and stuff. So all laid out to sort of maximize your profitability. Your infrastructure, of course, you're going to need a company behind you. You're not going to be able to do a mass produced product just by yourself. And of course, if it is mass produced, you're going to face competition. Uh, if your product sells, then somebody else is going to make something like it. So an example of that would be phones or uh, like no battery chargers. So that's the most common thing. Like when phones started first coming out, the battery chargers were all original originally made by the manufacturers, the brands themselves, so Samsung battery chargers and stuff. And in a very quick period of time, just a few months, there are going to be a lot of cheap alternatives to that. Battery chargers that cost up to 5 times less than the originals. So how would you handle a situation like that? Now, mass production as is doesn't affect us as individual makers, but the thing that you have to think about is, if you try to manufacture something in a limited way, and it works and it's a good idea, one of the things you have to worry about is going to one of those websites and sees that somebody else has manufactured something like what you did at a cheaper price. So this happened to us years ago, although we never actually built a product, but we were just thinking about it. The controllers for laser displays. So at that time, the controllers were just mostly European made. So a few years after that, we started talking, hey, why don't we go back to that laser idea? What are the possibilities? We did our research, and then we found out there were a lot of Chinese manufacturers already making it for prices that were so cheap. Okay? So it didn't actually make any sense to build something like that when there's already competition. So limited production. This is something a smaller group can do, like do a crowdfunding thing on Kickstarter. So you build enough to supply pre-orders, or if you have distributors that want to carry your product, that's it. You have an estimated number of products that you've already sold through pre-orders or through commitments by your distributors. So of course it's going to be on a smaller scale than mass production, but figure things out. As long as you know, have profits, then that's okay. Same thing with the competition, and that is also one of the dangers in making something. I remember this story I read before about somebody doing a Kickstarter for a selfie stick. So even before the the Kickstarter campaign was finished, he already found a website in China selling almost the exact same thing. So there are companies that are very quick to manufacture stuff, and these are, if you're trying to get to a certain level where your production is going to be slightly large, then that's one very big thing to think about. What do you do when somebody else makes almost the same product at a lower cost? So let's go now to what we can do as individuals. So these are commission stuff. So on a per order basis, somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd like that controller, build one for me. So profits will depend on the number you can sell. I mean, if it's just a one-off, then charge appropriately for your time, your labor, your expenses. The design level, yeah, of course, it has to be as professional as it needs to be. Uh, but for one-offs, it depends on what the product is for. Like I do a lot of products mostly for events, so that means they use the product for the event or maybe a few more like it, but they after that, that's it. They usually just shelve it. So these are just small products used in a short period of time, and in that case, the MT plus P design level works. So MT plus P, it's just a joke among us. It's holding things with a masking tape and a prayer. Well, actually, lots of prayers. So, uh, why does that happen? Because in some instances, especially in events, uh, you tell people, hey, it'll take me 2 weeks to build this thing. They say, but the event is next week. So what can you do? So you just build it as fast as possible, tape it up, and pray during the event that nothing happens. But always, even with one-offs like this, I always build at least two units. So there's always something uh, I have, just in case the masking tape fails uh, in what they're using. There's always something I have as a backup to use instead. So your infrastructure, you and some partners. By partners, I mean the people that will help you get your products made or sold. And now again, there's competition. So in this space, uh, if it's custom work, then it's your competition uh, are the people that do the same thing you do. Uh, what I don't like about this is the price wars. So usually they'd ask for bids. How much can you do this? So in my recommendation is, if you are doing this as a side gig and you don't really need, or you're not really forced to take the job, then don't go into a price war. It's not good for you in the long run, because even if you get more projects from that same company or person, then they'll expect you to give low rates. So it's better to establish a higher price, but make sure your product is solid, good, it works. And what I do is I usually put in some sort of special feature to that product to sort of give it you know a, a reason that I can charge more. So one way I've done it is, when the ESP32 came out, with the Wi-Fi stuff, I just started building Wi-Fi capability into it. So you need to have a bit of web development on work on the side, but they don't really need to use the Wi-Fi feature, and they probably never will use it. But just having it there actually makes the product sort of look better, and of course it is better. But in practice, they would never actually use it. But the feature is there. It enables me to sort of raise my prices to a certain level that would be much better than just not doing it. So when you're starting out with, would you sell it just a product or an entire service? Well, in our case, so we're using the example of these cold neon things and the brightness controller. So it's a product. Uh, and even if you're starting out, say you're a builder and you're trying to uh, get people to know about you, you don't just give them a sort of a PDF file with what you can do. Always center on a product that you've already built, uh, because if you just say, hey, I'm a builder, I can build this range of stuff using Arduino, ESP32, Raspberry Pi, and that, there will always be instances where they ask you something that you're not qualified to do. uh, so it would be better if you have one product to show and tell, that you can tell them that, hey, I have this product, would you like to buy it, are you interested in it, or if not, then I can do custom work as well. So always have a product that you can center the conversation around, rather than just generally say, I can build a lot of stuff. Okay. But anyway, for our purposes, so we're talking about the cold neon uh, brightness controller. So your time, you know, why are you doing this? Is this just a side gig? Do you have a full time job? Well, Me, do have a full-time job. I mean, electronics is not something I can rely on, and I've actually just gone back to it uh, in just the past few years because it's so expensive to do. So uh, for me now, it's just a side gig. But of course, we all have that dream of building that one product that can be mass produced one day. My full time job is in software. So as I mentioned previously, I do use that a lot to add value to the hardware stuff I make. So it may be just a simple Arduino connected to a laptop, but most of the functionality I implement on the laptop in the software that I make to control it. So if you're planning a startup, well, good luck. Can't help you there. I mean, that's not my. I failed a lot trying to do all those startup things. So designing and building it. So in this sort of case study that we're trying to do, the prototype or proof of concept is easy. Like for example, the brightness controller that I showed you in the previous video. If I didn't fiddle with the cameras and the lighting and trying to make a video, it's something you can do in an hour or maybe less, just to show that it works. Now, designing a final product is more difficult, and that is where I've had a lot of problems. Uh, for example, you have to choose your processor. So, what are you going to use? Arduino works, but there are certain things that you need to consider, like how many lights would you want it to control? I mean, will the Arduino do? Or how would you want to control it? So, if it's just a fixed sequence of lights that will never change, then you can just hard code it into the Arduino. But if you want to be able to change it dynamically, if the user wants to have special lighting sequences, then you need to be able to talk with the chip uh, with whatever you're going to use more conveniently. So one of the things I'm considering is an ESP32 with Wi-Fi, so you can just use your phone to change those sequences. Uh, Another thing is the mechanical stuff, like do you build one big box with 24 connectors or a smaller box with six? So now that would depend on you'd have to do research on what your market is, what people would actually use. So in our case, we're trying to make signs, so I'm still studying that. And here's one thing, I just put this there because this has been bugging me for the past maybe 2 or 3 years. I've been trying to build a custom CO2 laser engraver, and the thing that's had me stuck is this simple question: do I move the entire, just the mirror of the laser, or do I move, the entire laser unit, laser tube with the mirror attached to it? Uh, why that's a problem is because it's a special application. It's a niche application, but that one thing that you would think that would be simple has actually just delayed me for months and months and months. But anyway, it's not actually. It's just a pet project at this point, so never actually gotten to build it. So in your design, you also have to think about the features for different business models. So, for example, if you're trying to build it for home use, then you're not gonna have exposed wiring in your product. You're not supposed to. Okay? But if it's for maybe people who make signs, then exposed wires or you know uh, terminal blocks, that's fine because they expect to have these features for their particular cases. So selling I suck at selling, and it's something I can do, but it just is not something that comes naturally to me. So if you talk about selling, then that's the image that we get is something like that it's either an insurance salesman that's very pesky, or something like on a higher level, like Elon Musk that can tell stuff to NASA. But for us, uh, basically the easiest way to do it is get a partner who can actually sell, but it's difficult to find the right people. Well, you can also hire someone, but then it's also difficult to get the right people to hire. And do you have the money to hire somebody just for that? For me, the most effective is show and tell selling. So it's some people think of selling as uh, that insurance salesman that goes to and forces you to buy stuff. For show and tell, I mean, what do people like us like to do? You make our projects and we show everyone. So just treat it like that. The only important thing is you have to do your show and tell to as many people as possible in your market. So don't just do it to your friends who aren't going to buy it. Uh, but you'd have to be able to do so. For example, if your target market is people who make signs, then you'd have to send emails to the people who make signs. So do your research and just do a simple show and tell. uh, One of the things I've done before is just make a video. So I just like this. So tell them, hi, I just saw your Facebook page and I noticed you're doing things with lights. So uh, I have this. Would you be interested in some way? So I just do a video like that, send it to as a Facebook message, and that's it. I get replies on that. So pricing, how much? It's still something I haven't decided, but of course we would want to price it as high as possible to get the most profit as possible. Uh, but if you price it too high, then there's always going to be somebody else that says, I'm going to be able to build it much cheaper. So uh, you have to have a unique advantage, or you know a secret feature. So normally what I would do is plan an extra feature into the product, but I don't mention it to anyone yet. And then I'll just sort of mention it if I need to go over a something like a price objection. No, for example, that Wi-Fi thing. So if they are not really going to use Wi-Fi, I'm not going to mention it. But if somebody then they sell, then they tell me that somebody else is able to do it, much cheaper. Then that's when I would say, yeah, but it can do Wi-Fi. So that also gets over the danger that when you tell people about the capabilities of your product, then they would normally ask somebody, some other people, how much this would building this actually cost. So if you don't give out all the functionalities, you don't tell all your secrets at once, then that gives you an edge later on when you need to sort of go over an objection. So sell versus rent. Uh, Oddly enough, I actually prefer renting certain stuff, not all. So, for example, if they were sign makers and they need product for the brightness controller, so that they can install it in the signs that they make, which they sell to their own customers, then that's just a sale. There's can't rent, that product because they'll install it somewhere that you have no control over. And of course you need support to be able to support and maintain your product, so make sure you build it well. So what about renting? So renting will happen uh, in certain instances, like for example, if there are, in this case, one of the places where we can sort of get this rented is, get into a partnership with a light and sound supplier. Those people who do stuff for events, or event fabricators, those who make the sets and the design the environment for particular events. So in that sort of a setup, you just, you know rent them the controller and they can use it for that day or that week. So the build, processor, I'm still undecided. Might be the ESP32, or might be the Arduino. uh, it's going to be at the module level, so it means I'm not going to design a custom PCB. I'm just going to use the modules and just stick it on a PCB breadboard. So breadboards, these things work. So for this sort of limited runs, they work as long as you make your, all the soldering connections, you know well made. The case, probably a standard project box or aluminum extrusion. Connectors, terminal blocks, because again, the main market for this would be people who make signs, and they'll be mounting all of this inside the sign anyway. uh, Power supply would be external, so could be, just standard power supply. Number of light strips controlled, still undecided. As I mentioned before, should I make it a big box with 24 uh, light supported, or smaller boxes with 8 lights controlled? Still undecided on that. Okay, again, let's summarize the sales. You have two customer types for this. So for the direct sale, these are the people who make the signs. So once they make signs, they'd want, your controller to control it. And the companies that sell the lead supplies. So I've seen a number of companies that just sell these lead strips. So if they have a controller that can, make better signs or control the brightness, then it would, complement their own business of selling these things. So it helps them by selling your product. Uh, for renting, uh, you can con- you can try to contact, as I mentioned, the light and sound rental companies or event fabrication companies. Uh, Personally, I'd probably start with a renting uh, before the sales, because at least for the renting, I can control the, you know I can rent something already. I can have it rented while still developing it, while the design is still not final. So that's just my personal opinion. So next steps. What the next step would be to finalize the designs and the capabilities. Easier said than done. Uh, Build the first final usable prototype, or the prototype that I can actually show and tell. Leave it with somebody and let them play with it, and then once that's done, show and tell to as many people as possible. So that's it for our case study now on building a project of using these gold neon LED strips. So that's it. See you in the next video. Hope you do well in all your projects and all the stuff that you do. See you later, guys.